December 1984. Inside a freezing Bucharest textile factory, 200 women stood in long lines on the concrete floor. Skirts hiked up, legs spread, they waited while white-coated doctors performed forced pelvic exams right there in the open hall. Securitate officers circled with clipboards, noting every result out loud. One woman, pale and shaking, was pulled aside. She had missed her period. The officer announced her name to the entire shift. Nicolae Ceaușescu held absolute power over Romania's 23 million people. His decrees reached into every bedroom and every womb. But everything changed when the streets filled with rage. On Christmas Day 1989, the dictator who had policed women's bodies lay dead in a snowy military courtyard in Targovist. His short, balding frame was riddled with bullets, blood soaking his dark overcoat, crumpled beside his wife Elena like two discarded sacks. 112 words. Nicolae Ceaușescu was born on January 26, 1918, in the tiny village of Scornășesti. He was the third of 10 children in a dirt-poor peasant family. Hunger and disease took several of his siblings before they reached 5. At 11 he was sent to Bucharest to apprentice as a shoemaker. The days were long, the pay tiny, and the work left his hands scarred. What most people don't know is that one night in 1933, after his best friend died in a police raid on a secret meeting, young Nicolae cried alone in a freezing alley. That loss pushed him deeper into the communist underground. He joined the party at 19, spent years in prison for his beliefs, and emerged hardened. By the 1950s he had become a loyal lieutenant to Gheorghe George. When Dej died in 1965, Ceaușescu stepped into the top job at age 47. The first sign of darkness appeared almost immediately. He praised the party's control over every citizen while quietly planning how to expand that control even further. The system rewarded his obsession with total order. He rose not by brilliance but by never questioning the machinery of fear. Ceaușescu gained total power in 1965 when the Communist Party named him General Secretary. Romania was still recovering from war and Stalinist purges. He promised independence from Moscow and a better life for all. In October 1966 he signed Decree 770. Abortion and contraception were banned for almost every woman under 45 who had fewer than 4 children. The goal was simple: grow the population from 23 million to 30 million to fuel factories and farms. Doctors became state spies. Factories and schools turned into checkpoints. Each step felt logical to the regime. First came the law. Then came the monthly checks. Then came the taxes on childless adults over 25. By the early 1970s the birth rate had doubled from 14 to 27 per thousand. Ceaușescu toured the country awarding heroine mother medals to women with 10 or more children. He called the fetus the property of the entire society. The machinery was now in place. Every new restriction made the next one seem inevitable. Women who tried to resist faced wage cuts, public warnings, or worse. The system that rewarded his worst qualities had become law. The real horror began the moment Decree 770 took effect. Every woman of childbearing age had to report for gynecological exams every 1 to 3 months at her workplace. In factories across Bucharest, Timișoara, and Cluj, lines formed before dawn. Doctors in state uniforms performed the checks in open rooms or behind thin curtains while supervisors and Securitate officers stood nearby taking notes. Women who missed a period were interrogated on the spot in front of their co-workers. Refusal meant loss of job, fines up to 5,000 Romanian lei, or prison. One survivor later said, "They treated us like cattle at market. I stood there shaking while they announced my name and my failure to the whole hall." Some women cried openly. Others just stared at the floor, broken. Public trials of doctors who performed illegal abortions became common. In one hospital in 1978 a witness watched in horror as a doctor was paraded into the report room wearing prison stripes. The prosecutor read the charges aloud while nurses and patients were forced to listen. The doctor said nothing. He received 20 years. According to court records from the period, over 10,000 women died between 1967 and 1989 from complications of unsafe illegal abortions. Romania's maternal mortality rate hit 159 deaths per 100,000 live births in 1989, the highest in Europe. What most people don't know is that hospitals kept secret wards for women bleeding out from botched procedures performed with coat hangers, knitting needles, or toxic herbal mixtures. Many were too terrified to seek help until it was too late. Unwanted babies filled orphanages. By the late 1980s, more than 100,000 children lived in institutions where food was scarce and care almost non-existent. Ceaușescu's own words appeared in party documents: anyone who avoids having children is a deserter who abandons the laws of national continuity. The policy was never about families. It was about numbers. Factories needed more workers. The state needed more soldiers. Women paid the price with their bodies and their lives. In some villages, entire generations of girls grew up knowing they would one day stand in those same factory lines, their futures already decided by the men in Bucharest. By December 1989, the seeds of collapse had grown too large to ignore. Food shortages had turned into outright hunger. Electricity was rationed to 2 hours a day. Heat was almost non-existent. On December 16, protests erupted in Timișoara after police tried to evict a Hungarian pastor. The crowds grew to thousands. Ceaușescu was on a state visit to Iran. When he returned, he ordered the army to fire on demonstrators. Soldiers killed hundreds of men, women, and children. On December 21, he called a mass rally in Bucharest's Revolution Square to condemn the troublemakers. Instead, the crowd began to boo. For the first time in 24 years, his voice cracked on live television. He and Elena fled by helicopter the next day. They were captured on December 22 near Targovist. In those final hours, Ceaușescu still believed the people loved him. He paced the room repeating that it was all a plot by foreign agents. The outside world had finally caught up. Television images of the dead in Timișoara had spread everywhere. The army switched sides. The machinery he built turned against him overnight. The end came on Christmas Day 1989 at 2:50 in the afternoon. Nicolae and Elena Ceaușescu stood in the inner courtyard of a military barracks in Targovist. Their hands were tied behind their backs with thin rope. Nicolae wore a dark wool overcoat, rumpled from 3 days in hiding. His face was pale, eyes wide with disbelief, mouth slightly open as if still trying to give orders. Elena's hair was disheveled under a scarf. She wore a heavy coat and boots, her posture rigid with defiance. A 3-man firing squad from the paratroop regiment faced them 10 meters away. The trial had lasted less than 2 hours. The verdict was read: death. Nicolae began to sing a few lines of the Internationale. Elena screamed, "You sons of bitches!" The soldiers opened fire. The crack of the rifles echoed off the concrete walls. Both bodies jerked violently and collapsed into the snow. Blood spread quickly across the white ground. A military cameraman caught the last seconds on tape. The couple who had ruled Romania for 24 years lay motionless, faces frozen, coats torn by bullets. Their bodies were loaded into a truck and driven away. Later that evening, the images were broadcast around the world. The men who turned women's bodies into state property died believing he was still loved. The question lingers: how many more leaders will promise strength and deliver control over the most private parts of life? And how long until societies remember that no decree can command the human spirit forever?